Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Kae, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Morning, Mary. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes, me as well. I know we're going to have a great conversation about women in work and your new book. But before we get to that, I would like to hear about the first job you ever had as a young person.
I ever had.
hmm
My first job was in fifth grade, and I picked beans on a farm for a family in the town that I grew up in. That was my first role.
How did that come about?
A friend of mine that I was in school with, she was working there, and we knew the family because I grew up in a really small town. So we knew the family, and she said, I'm doing this summer. It's good money, and so I took the job and started working with her. That was my first job, and I've been working since. And it was funny because I talked to other friends into joining, and my two of my sisters. And it's actually hard work. It's very back-breaking work, and it's hot in the summer. And I remember we didn't want to do it anymore. We wanted to quit, and our all of our parents were like, "Absolutely not. You are not quitting that job." So
I
it
could
was a long
absolutely,
summer.
I could imagine a fifth grade, as a fifth grade person thinking, oh, this is going to be so much fun and we're going to make money and I'm going to be out
Yeah,
doing this and then doing it for a little while and be like, okay, I'm out. And,
yeah,
and saying, well, no,
yeah,
let's go ahead and finish this project.
yeah.
So
A
what are,
good lesson to learn.
that's right. So what are a few other pre-professional jobs you've had?
After that, I babysat like for three children. And one was a baby who had asthma. So that was really
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a nanny, but it was again friends that of my older siblings. So I did that for a summer. And then I worked in a hospital I was a dietary aide helping with the food, delivering food, understanding their diets and things like that. So I did that for several years. Even in college, I would come back and do that in the summers. And then I worked at the intelligence school in the military base near where I grew up because my father was in the military. So I worked there during college in the summer. So I had two jobs in the summers. And then towards the end of my college, I was working at a company as a telemarketer and going to school full time. And I remember my senior year in college, I was working like 30 hours a week and having a full time schedule for school. And once I graduated, they promoted me to, I think it was like a product marketing specialist or something like that. That started my career in the marketing side in software.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of working already by the time
Yes.
you've graduated from
Mhm.
college. Was that innate in you that being industrious, a value in your family, both?
Some of it was, yeah, I think it was both. I mean, my parents were obviously, hardworking. I have a lot of siblings. I come from a family of nine kids, and so we all, I saw the older ones working hard and strong work ethics in my family. And some of it was necessity. I was paying for my college, and
hmm
so I knew I had to work in high school to like save up to pay for college, so I didn't have to take out as many student loans.
hmm
And so that really started that journey.
What did you major in college?
I majored in economics, not in marketing. And then I did get my MBA, but all of the marketing and software that I learned was hands-on from
Mm,
work.
mm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you go into communications, in marketing, but you majored in economics. Why did you choose economics?
I really well, first I started as an accounting major for 2 years, and then I was living in New York, going to school there, and then I moved to Massachusetts and went into economics. I loved economics. My family is one which we talk a lot about current events, politics, economics at the dinner table, and ever since I was growing up, and so I was very fascinated with that. I loved accounting. I was good at bookkeeping and accounting in high school. So that's why I think I took that path. But I recognized that that wasn't the life that I wanted to be an accountant. And I wanted to study economics, and I concentrated in international economics for developing countries, and that was really fascinating to me. Cultures have always been really interesting to me, and helping underserved populations has always been interesting to me. So that is why I chose that path, and I really loved that. But I ended up not doing anything in that profession, because I naturally just moved up from, the work that I was doing in college, and got promoted. And, I worked in that company for 10 years and kept getting promoted, and ended up in software and really liked technology. And so I stayed in the tech side.
It's so interesting, like how people take their different paths, like especially as a young person, what you think you want to do, and you start doing it, and you say,
Yes,
I'm good at this, but it's not really what I want to be doing.
right.
And yet, I mean, we know nothing is ever lost from, picking beans in the field. That's such a good lesson about so many different things that you could pull apart.
Yes.
But I'm sure your economics background informs and has informed the work that you've done and the insight that you have and the experience that you bring to the table, even if you're doing something different.
Yes, always, right? Because you
Hmm.
understand markets, and
Hmm.
that's part of it, is really understanding markets. It's cultures, countries, and markets that you're trying to understand. And the accounting really paid off. I get a lot of laughter from my budgets from finance, from my financial peers, like, wow, you're very detailed in your budgets. And marketing's, we have probably one of the bigger budgets in the company, other than probably the tech team. And so you have a lot of people on your team who have hands in that budget. So managing a budget is something that came really easy to me, where I've known other marketers where it wasn't that easy. So that was helpful. So I do use some of the skills that I learned, from school for sure.
Absolutely. So, what is it that has drawn you into tech? What is interesting about tech and innovation that has captured you?
I think what the improvements that it makes for companies and for people, and the technical, and I wouldn't consider myself extremely technical, but I love learning technology and understanding how it is used by companies, and having to translate that into a language that they can understand. So working with the engineers and the product teams to understand what it does, and then translating that in a way that the audience or customers we're trying to get to can understand how it may help them. That's what fascinates me.
Yeah. And so with all of this, your whole work career, right? And you just write this book, Not Made for You, which is
Mhm.
about a lot of things, but it's about women, and systems and women at work and women maybe specifically in tech. How did that come about in your interest in empowering and helping women?
So I have been wanting to talk about this topic for a long time. I didn't realize it was going to be in the form of a book. Honestly, I love to write, but I thought I'd write a murder mystery more than I would write a nonfiction business book, frankly. But I wanted to talk about this for a long time, because I recognize these patterns that were happening to women, and other people who are othered. And I've worked in many companies, and I recognize it wasn't just that one manager or that one department. It was a pattern in these companies. And I started to figure out ways to maneuver through or around some of this bias and discrimination. So I had a successful career. And in the meantime, I was coaching other women, and men, actually, because anyone who's worked for me knows that no matter when you've worked for me, if you worked for me before, you can call me anytime and I will help you with whatever it is, figuring out a marketing plan, or if you have an issue with a manager or trying to get promoted or whatever it is. So I did a lot of mentoring, and I still do. And I recognize that when women, especially when they came to me with a problem, that they were feeling this block of trying to get promoted or get recognized or get visibility, and I would give them a way to say it or how, help them structure the conversation, I just saw this sense of relief on their face
Mm.
that, oh, this isn't actually that hard. It's not confrontational. This is pretty easy for me to have this conversation. And they feel this relief because it doesn't have to be this supercharged event.
Right.
And they also don't have to think about, oh, now I have to leave because, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Hmm.
And so, and especially when they try it and they see some success, and now they have that confidence to try different things like that to really align and clarify situations that are happening to them and setting boundaries. And so I just realized that it was an important conversation and it was still happening in the rooms that I was in as well. And there was this level of frustration. And I thought, I need to talk to more than just the couple of women and men that I mentor. Like, how do I do this on a broader scale? And so writing the book was one way to start that process. And it really is just a start because I really want to get out like we're doing today and getting out to broader audiences so they can hear the message, understand the strategies, and also just start having the conversation with other people.
Mhm. I love everything that you've said because I'm very interested in healthy work environments and through the lens of dealing with conflict. I think that
Mhm.
dealing with conflict and learning those skills is about personal empowerment. And as you were speaking, um, I can just hear, because I've seen it myself, the relief that people find when what it is they want because they've built it up, because it's been building, it's this huge thing, and you help
Yes.
them to de-escalate and show them the path forward. Okay, what is it that you want? How are we going to get it? Let's make a plan. It doesn't have, like you said, it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can
Right.
be, it's so life-giving for someone to be able to see a path forward because
Yes.
when you don't know, you don't know. And having those tools, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a book, but having those paths forward so that you can imagine who you are, given your circumstances, and what are your options. Because many times we just close down and we think, well, I guess the only options for me to leave or to take it.
Yes.
And both are bad. So what am
Right.
I going to do? Am I going to leave or I'm going to take it?
Right.
And both have these sometimes, I mean, sometimes of course we have to take certain things, and sometimes we have to leave, but
Yeah.
many times there's so many other things that we can do and try and get creative and network and find what is the next thing.
Yes. And I really love my industry. I love technology and I love my profession of marketing. And I don't want people to leave. I have heard, women say, I can't do this. And not just women. Some of these industries are really difficult. Tech is a tough industry to be in sometimes, right? But it's also fascinating and exciting. And I still have that excitement. And I don't want to lose people out of our industry. I certainly don't want to lose women. We don't even have enough in the industry, right? So I don't want to lose them. And so that's the other part of this. Like, stay. If you
Right,
like, there is a way, not in every culture, not
right,
because some of them are toxic and you should leave.
right.
But for the most part, there is a way to express what's happening, name what's happening, address it, and be able to move on and have a great career. Because I have done that.
Mhm. Yeah, sometimes, of course, we have to leave. Sometimes things are just not something that we want to try to stay and fixed, or we can't fix, or whatever it
Yes.
is. But so many times we just we build our own narrative that it is toxic and there's nothing that can be done.
Right.
And and of course, that is the case sometimes. But it really is the case many times that there is a path forward. And what I have found is that this culture or this person or persons that I have a narrative about, they won't listen, they're a bully, they're a whatever it might be, they don't have that narrative. They don't even know there's a problem.
That's right.
Right. And
Yes.
so I'm thinking they're intentionally harming me. They're intentionally holding me back. They don't want to listen. They want to minimize me. And the other person's just oblivious to,
Yes. Yeah.
and so you can't fix what you don't know is a problem.
Yeah.
And so it
Right.
is, I think one of the messages when I think about conflict is we got to get out of the magical thinking of they just need to own it. They need to say they're sorry. They need to change their ways. And they know, and they're intentionally doing this. And usually that's not the case. They don't know. And
No.
so we need to have those confident conversations in the right way, the right time to move forward.
Yes, and I talk a lot about separating the intent from the impact
Hmm.
that it had on you versus the true intention of that person. And if
Hmm.
you can stop and think about that first, and usually look at what's going on with them. Are they under
Hmm.
pressure? Are they incented a certain way that this is important to them? Or was it just a miscommunication?
Hmm.
Right? Like start there. And then you can discuss the impact with that person as well. Like, hey, you might not be aware of this, but what you said or this conversation we had this impact on me. And have the conversation in a calm way. Don't always assume malice, because I sometimes we think we go to that like they are. Now, part of it is because we've had that happen to us, right? Where it was malice. But don't always assume malice first, right? Like check in and really understand their intentions. Give them the benefit of the doubt first, but have the conversation. So a lot of times we assume malice and we don't have the conversation. And my thing is don't assume malice and always have the conversation with them, because you might be enlightened to the situation that it's very different. They have something else going on for
Hmm.
them. They're under a lot of pressure themselves. And unfortunately, they took that pressure to you,
Right,
maybe not intentionally, right?
right, right.
So,
That's such good advice because you have intent and you have impact. And sometimes we tend to lean one way, like excuse people's behavior
yes,
and like just take it because I know they didn't really mean it. So I need to not feel what I'm feeling. I need to
yes,
minimize the impact on myself, making ourselves smaller because I believe this person didn't mean to do it. Right. So we need to hold both things, like whatever the impact it was, and owning that. Right. So why did it impact me in this way? What were they
hmm,
aware of? What was their intent? And the way forward is having conversations with ourselves. Like, why did
yes,
this impact me so much? What's going on with me? And I see my colleague over here, they didn't appear that it bothered them at all, but it did
right.
bother me. And that's very important in understanding that. And then also those questions about what is this person's intent? And one way to know is to have a conversation, ask.
Yeah. I'll give you an example. I was working for someone once who was really giving me a difficult time in front of my peers in our one-on-ones, and it just was relentless.
Hmm.
And to me, I felt it was really unfair because it was the time of year where, our audience was not paying attention. It's summer months, business is slow. And so I knew that our leads or opportunities we're building would go way down. But I was getting a lot of just heat all the time, every day from this person. And so, and it was frustrating, honestly,
Hmm.
for me.
Sure.
And so now I stuck up for myself every time and said, you realize it's August, right? So this is going to change in September and October. You realize it's August. And I even had to say, you can continue to have these conversations with me, but my answer will never change. It's August. We all know that. I can show you the past couple of years. This is what happens in July and August, right? So I stuck up for myself and held my boundaries. But then I would have the conversation with him and just try to get him to know him a little bit better. And one thing he started to talk to me about, because we were working on something and it showed me what his pressure, because
Hmm.
he was trying to move up and he was promised something that wasn't happening.
Hmm.
And in his mind, that's because we weren't driving enough sales or enough marketing opportunities, right? So now I understand where he's coming from. And we started to have that conversation. And it's easy enough to say, look, I know this is potentially a lot of pressure for you as well. And then he opened up and told me what his pressure was, right? And so again, it's just really opening up the conversation. You have to have the conversation. I could have easily not had the conversation, been really angry with this guy and said, I am out of here. I am not dealing with this. But it changed our relationship a lot by just talking to him about what he was doing, why I didn't understand. Like, I keep telling you this is August, what's going on? And then he finally how are you? What's going on with you? Right.
Yeah.
And so he opened up and that changed everything.
That's such a great example because you were having conversations with him, right? He's
Yeah.
saying one thing, you're saying another. But you're talking, but you're not really dialoguing, right? It's like you're bouncing off each other because you're almost answering different questions, right?
Yes.
So I'm answering what I think you're saying to me because of the way you're saying it to me, right? And vice versa. But stopping that narrative and saying, going just a little bit, okay, now, well, what's going on? Like,
Right.
I hear your frustration. Where is it coming from, right? That just going down a little bit deeper opens the dialogue so that you can understand like, what is his pain point? What's going on with him? What is he really nervous about other than what you think he's nervous about? And then you can, right, that gridlock opens up when we really get to know what is going on, what is somebody valuing, and that's why dialogue, right? It's sometimes we think we've had it, but clearly you weren't. You were just going back and forth, and you
Right.
stopped, and then you engaged, like you said,
Yeah.
the opening up. That's wonderful. Great
Yeah, because
example.
that's understanding, just taking a minute, taking a beat to understand where their pressure potentially is coming from.
Hmm.
In sales training, you learn the 7 levels of pain, sales and marketing training, the 7 levels of pain. So when you're trying to understand a customer, they're going to tell you that top level. But if you
Hmm.
keep asking, well, why is that? Or why is that painful? And doing that 7 levels down, you're going to get to why it's painful for them.
Hmm.
And that's what I got to with this person. This was about his own career aspirations that weren't happening for him.
Hmm.
So that changed it for me. And now we're in this together, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I get that. I have career aspirations as well. Now we are more aligned. I understand, but you have to understand where I'm coming from and let's figure this out together. What can we do together to solve that problem for both of us?
Mm.
Right?
That's great. I love that. I love that because it really also speaks to teamwork, right? So when a partner or somebody in my organization that especially that I work with is succeeding, I'm, like the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And so if I
Yeah.
can really understand you and partner with you and your goals, your individual goals, we can work with each other, even if we started out seemingly opposing. But once we drill down and see, oh, I also have these goals. And you can find partners in the most unlikely places. Um,
Yes.
and the more that we show that we really do care and we're interested in other people and we start speaking their language, they can start speaking ours. It's really it's interesting how that happens.
Yes. I love that you said that we're interested in other people because that really is the key, that
Hmm.
we have enough empathy
Hmm.
and patience to understand it from a personal level.
Hmm.
Like what's this person going through? And now some people may say, well, I don't have time for that. I just got to get my job done. But you're not getting your job done well if you're not working with others, right?
Right.
I am not going to be successful as a leader if I don't have great rapport with other people in the company,
Yeah.
other departments, people on my team, my peers, etc. So it is important to care about other people and taking that time to build good relationships.
Absolutely. For so many different reasons. One, it's you don't have time not to do that. It costs so much more time. I mean, your own
Yes.
time, spinning wheels, just money itself when we don't take that pause, when we're not genuinely curious, because we're going to not be solving the problems, because we're solving what we think is a problem, or we're not partnering or not getting the advantage of the expertise of the people around us and what they
Right.
see, right? If we don't take that time. So it's going to, people are going to cost you time. That's people. It's going to
Yes.
be less if you do it up front and you build those relationships. It's going to cost a lot more once things fall apart. Or if you're unable to really find that way to work well with somebody, it's always going to be disjointed and you're not going to be able to um, have them say what they think they need to say, or all that creativity and innovation that comes when you work well together, that synergy. If I say this, then you say that, and then we build off each other because we have a good working relationship.
Yeah,
Right? You really can't afford not to do that.
no, I would not be successful as a leader if I didn't collaborate with other people. I get my
Hmm.
job done faster and we make
Hmm.
better decisions because, as you said, we're coming from different angles of thought to get to that better decision, to solve that problem better. If I'm working and I had to learn that as an executive, as a young executive. that you can't work in a silo. You're just not going to be successful. You have to work with other departments or other people on your team. And that requires building a relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about your work career and your younger self, how did you deal with conflicts at work, and has that changed over time?
I think I've gotten better at it. Sure. I think when you're newer in your career, there's not as much confidence. I definitely was somebody who stuck up for myself, usually, not always. So that's the trick. I think when you're newer in your career, you may let things go that you shouldn't,
Mhm.
because when things happen in a room, someone's speaking over you or they're taking credit for your ideas, you're being devalued in that room and you're losing
Mhm.
credibility. So you do have to address them. And I don't think, as we're younger, we don't always do that.
Mhm.
And for me, as I got more comfortable and felt like I had a little bit more influence in those rooms and more visibility, I felt more comfortable having conversations around, conflict. I am somebody who will not, I'll let something go if it's really not important, or if that person doesn't have a high impact on me or my department. It depends on what's going on, frankly.
Mhm.
But usually I won't leave something smoldering or happening, that I don't do that. I will address it. They may not feel comfortable, because a lot of people don't feel comfortable with those type of conversations, but I've gotten good at helping people feel comfortable when I'm talking to them, and it's the way that I'm bringing up the conversation. So, but that took time to learn how to do that, and I think I take a lot of care in doing that well, professionally, calmly, without a lot of emotion. And so, yeah, I think it's improved over time, but I think the biggest thing that I would say is you do have to have those conversations.
Mhm.
You have to have the conversations, whether or not it's comfortable. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Right.
and just have the conversation.
Absolutely. When I think about people who have, leaders, so they've risen in their organization or wherever they might be, and from my experience with leaders and the people that I talk with and doing conflict resolution, just because someone's a leader doesn't mean that they are comfortable or that they will have those conversations, like
Right.
comfortably uncomfortable, right? So it's
Yes.
not comfortable to have those conversations, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, I think that more than more than just sort of the general population at work, leaders are more likely to have difficult conversations, but not necessarily. So
Right.
that you are a leader doesn't entail that you will have these difficult conversations. So did somebody mentor that to you, or did you just kind of learn it as you went along? Like, this is my goal, and if I want to reach that goal, I'm going to have those conversations when they come up.
I think it was more the latter, that I knew I knew where I wanted to be in my
Mm.
career, or where I wanted to, what my goal was.
Mhm.
And I recognized that if I didn't have those conversations, these barriers would continue.
Mm.
And so I had to start to have uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable for me and potentially uncomfortable for them.
Mhm.
Right. And so it came from that. And I did have good mentors along the way, more around making sure I spoke up in meetings, because they knew I knew what I was talking about. But when I was younger, I didn't always speak up in meetings and I was uncomfortable. So I did have great bosses or mentors, men mostly, because I typically my whole career I've worked mostly for men. They were great about, like, giving me that nudge, go ahead, you should say this in the meeting, like just helping me get comfortable in those rooms. Um, but then again, I think most of it was seeing that what was happening, in these companies where somebody's getting promoted, but the evidence or what they're telling me, that narrative, me and other people, that narrative of why that person got promoted did not match with the evidence in front of me.
Mm.
Right? They didn't have better results than I did. They weren't smarter than I was, right? It was
Mhm.
just that they knew somebody in the company or whatever, or they were chummy with somebody, which is not a bad thing, right? That is part of it. It's building relationships, as we talked about that. That is what you have to do.
Right.
But I started to recognize the narrative they were telling me why somebody was getting promoted and why I wasn't ready just didn't match with the evidence. And so I had to start speaking up about that, or I wasn't going to get anywhere in the organization.
Yeah. That's so interesting when we think about moving up in an organization and being noticed and recognized. And a lot of us have this narrative. If I show up and do good work, people are going to see, and then they're going to prize what I prize, good work ethic, doing these sorts of things, hitting my numbers or whatever it might be. They will see that. And it's just sort of this almost like a spreadsheet of people rise, people fall, given these extrinsic measures. And
Right.
that's not it. And I'm sure that's part of what you do at helping people understand the lay of the land. We can talk about it as a game, but sometimes people think about games as being negative. But it's what is it? Visibility is so important, and
Yes.
women tend to do a lot of things that are invisible.
Yes, we have to be careful with that, right? Because we do a lot of unpaid, as they say, or invisible work.
Yeah.
Because we do believe coming in, that's one of the lies that we're told, or the myths that we believe, that we can come in and do work really hard and we're going to get promoted. But that's not how promotions work in these systems, right? It is around influence, visibility of the work that you're doing, but tied to the impact of the company or your department. So those are things you have to figure out, like the work, and prioritize the work that you're doing based on how much impact is this going to have on my department goals and my company goals. And now making sure you share that, the results and that impact, right? Because influence is a big piece of it, as is network. Like, who's your network? Who are the people that are influential in the company, that are helping people get promoted? And do you have a relationship with those people? And it's not always your boss, right? And so those are the things that we're not taught. We just think you come in and work hard. And I did it for many years. And a lot of women, we are used to taking on a lot of things because we see something broken and we want to fix it. And I am definitely one of those people.
Right.
But I found myself in roles where I was doing a ton of work and fixing everything and making sure this person's happy. Like, you take on that part too, right? Like making sure people are happy, and also doing the extra work that nobody else picks up. But I was recognizing that Dave over here on the side is getting promoted while I'm working really hard and I'm not getting promoted. And I started to put two and two together. It's not about the amount of work, it's about the work, the right work that you're doing, and the impact it's having on the business. Because ultimately, that's what your boss and their boss cares about, is hitting the company goals. And so you have to think about yourself and your work and what you select to do in terms of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times I think we come into an organization and I'm working with these people for this person, this boss that's right in front of me. And while that is true, I think if we have that bigger narrative of who am I as a professional? Who do I want to be? How am I showing up? What are my goals, right? What is it that I want to achieve? And if we have that, I think it can help us weather the barbs that come up. Every job is difficult. We will have conflicts everywhere. Some of them will be hard. Some of them will be easily resolved. This is just adult life at work, right? And then we have market and all these different sorts of pressures at work. But I think if you really, in a way, have a healthy detachment from any current structure you're in, because power is transitory. People come and they go.
That's right.
Systems change on a dime. And so
Yes.
if I've tied my wagon to this one person at this organization, what happens if they're fired? What happens if their
Yeah.
department is dissolved? What happens if all of a sudden they don't like me? Or, right, instead of really seeing that, who's in charge of my career? Oh, I am. Who's in
Yes.
charge of what I want to do next? It's not that person in front of me saying, you're not good enough, or we don't want you here, or, I mean, that is impactful, but that's not the whole truth, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
just this one slice. But I love the idea of really thinking about who am I as a professional in the world instead of who am I only in this company.
Yes, and I think recently did some content around this about you're the CEO of your career, not your
Mm,
boss. Like nobody else is paid to make sure that your career advances except for you.
mm,
And the way I approached my career was I knew where I wanted to go, right? And I knew the things that I needed to get to do that. I felt that I needed to have global experience. I needed to be able to manage large teams, right? I needed to have experience in different size companies and different businesses. I needed to understand different aspects of marketing because there's a lot. There's product marketing, there's brand, demand gen, all of those things. So I knew all the things I needed to have in order to become a CMO. And I looked at my roles in the companies that I was in. I selected my opportunities based off of that map, right? This company, I may not get these things, but I'm going to get global experience. That's great. I'm going
mhm,
to go for this opportunity, right?
mm.
And it's the same thing when you're working in a company. You have to have that map, though, of what you want because you can't advocate for yourself or your next opportunity or get visibility around something if you don't know where you're trying to go. And so
Yeah,
that's the first thing is figuring out that plan and understanding that if you're sitting and waiting for somebody else to create visibility for you or help you get promoted, I mean, some people will be kind and help, but if you're waiting for that, it may never happen. You have
right.
to create that for yourself.
Yeah. And I wonder, you've probably thought about this more than I have since you're a real interest in helping and empowering women at work, and specifically women in tech. But it seems to me that in general, and it's not just a male-female thing, but in general, women have a harder time promoting themselves
We
than,
do.
right?
Yeah.
And because this sort of team player, it's about us, it's about you see what's good because women tend to recognize other women, not all the time,
Mhm.
but and so it's do you have any advice for getting over yourself and promoting as self-care, not as look at me, I'm so great over other people, like narcissistic.
Yeah.
It's not narcissistic. It's a good, and it's good for everybody, other women too.
It's part of the job. It's part of
Mm,
your job, right? To have impact and then show your impact and work with other departments so they see that impact. That's part of the role. That's how I look at it. I don't
mm,
look at it as an ego thing. And I did. I'm sure I did because I wasn't great at promoting myself or the work. And it's not promoting yourself, it's promoting the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having on the organization. And if you look at it that way, it'll take away some of that fear of you're showing your ego.
mm,
And yeah, a lot of us we don't do that well. And I try and advocate for that in my teams by having people present in meetings in our safe environment for especially some of the younger or the early career people to have them present their idea or present something that worked well. I remember one person in another country, she did a program that worked really well. And I said, great, you're going to present that to the rest of the team on our global call. And she was like, oh, I said, you can do it. You're fine. Like getting them comfortable in an environment where they feel safe and then moving them out of that. So in one of my companies, we had somebody who was kind of newer in career. She had never presented before. She was doing social media for us. So we had our quarterly planning, and I said, you're going to present the results from your social media. And she was very good, very smart. She presented, she's like so nervous. I'm like, it's just us. It's just five of us in this room. Nobody cares. Go ahead. If you make a mistake, it's not really that big of a deal. So she presented and she was great at presenting. And so we had her do that a couple of times. And then I had her present at a town hall. And so, you're just helping them to promote what they're doing. And as a leader, you have to promote what your team's doing. So it's easier for me because I'm not typically promoting what I'm doing. I'm promoting what my team's doing. But a lot of that is to help them, but also to show the work that we're doing and the impact that we're having on the company. And that's how I look at it. And I think it's important for us to do that. And I think women, we think we're just going to work hard and somebody else is going to notice,
mhm.
but they don't.
Yeah. I like a lot of what you said, and one I think goes going back to um, if we want to major on the majors, like what does the organization think is important instead of what do I think is important if I want to advance
Yes.
here, right? And
Yes.
so if I can get clear about what is valued here and do it and then talk about it, it can also help me focus my work, right?
Yes.
Instead of I'm just throwing darts. I think this is important. I see this, I see that. All this stuff needs to be done. But what is being valued here? What is being promoted here? What, if you don't know, ask, ask your boss, ask your boss's boss. What's the thing that you want the most? What do you think is the most
Right.
valuable thing? What do you love? What do you think is just not, just nice to have, but not as important? That can help you focus. And so, but also looking for opportunities. If you're young in your role, you haven't done it very often, and maybe you lack some confidence. You get confidence by doing something. And so, look and ask for those smaller opportunities. Can
Yes.
I, present something at our weekly or monthly meeting, and then
Right.
partner with your boss to say, are there other larger opportunities? But it is all about looking and empowering, what it is that you want. And I think it's the same thing with conflict. So many people just sit in it thinking other people know. They must know. I'm suffering greatly. We're all suffering greatly. We are on fire here. They know. They've certainly they're going to do something about it. They're going to fire that boss or that person. They're going to reassign. And then it goes on for years
Yes.
because of course they know we can't do anything. And the answer is there's actually quite a lot you can do. And once you move that frame, you've already done something.
Yes.
So I'm an ombuds at University of Tennessee at Martin is one of the things that I do. And when anybody comes to me, that is they've already started to solve their problem, right? Because they come to me, it's confidential. I'm not advocating for anybody individually or the organization, but I'm there to listen and help that person decide what it is that they want to do next. But the very act of reaching out is they're getting out of that narrative that they've spun, that what has just been disempowering to them, and they've already made that first step. And I just love when
That's
people, I
true.
mean, it's so sad that they're in pain, but they've made the first step to do something different. And I
Yes.
just, that's,
Yeah.
that's so wonderful to see when people start to make that turn, but
It's
only they can
exciting.
make that turn.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see that. And the woman that did the town hall, she could have said, no, I don't want to do that. And I
Mhm,
wouldn't have forced it.
mhm,
But she didn't say no, which I love that about her.
mhm,
She was this very quiet person, but ambitious in a certain way.
mhm.
And I love seeing that. And you're right, there's a lot of people that just come to work, and that's okay if that's what you want. It's
Sure.
okay just to come to work, do your job, you're getting a paycheck, and maybe that's all you want out of that role. If you want more and you're trying to get promoted, you are going to have to make sure you get more visibility. And it is important to understand. I meet so many people that don't understand what their company goals are for the year or quarter or their team goals are. So, how are you prioritizing your day to day if you don't know what the goals are? And if you know what they are, it's easier. And I talk to my teams a lot about this. This is our goal for the quarter. So, if anybody else comes to us with other things, we can say, we have to focus on this first, and then
Mhm,
we'll see if we can
mhm.
help, right?
Right.
Because you can create busyness for yourself,
Right.
or other people can do it for you if
Right.
you're not clear on where the impact is, and you can articulate that impact and say, you know what, I can't work on that right now because this really is what I'm trying to do, and it's affecting this goal that we're trying to achieve in this quarter.
Mm. We say clarity is kindness. Clarity in so many different things. Like, what am I
Yes.
supposed to be doing? If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you got to figure that out. And how do
Yes.
you figure that out? Well, it depends on the system that you're in and the role that you are in, the
Right.
organization that you're in. But those are all things that can be figured out. Or
Yes.
you're the one that's deciding it. So then you decide it and you figure it out.
Right.
And once you know where you're going, you're much more likely to get there than if you don't know. You're just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and hopefully there's spaghetti and there's a wall, right? And that something
Right.
sticks. And that can be, you can just get so stuck if you don't know. And I think it's
Yes.
the same thing when we know where we want to be, whether it's climbing the corporate ladder or I want to be in this role for the foreseeable future, whatever that is. It's still not a stagnant position because I'm going to have to do things to even stay in this role because technology changes all the time.
Everything. Yes, you have
If
to
you're in an
advance within that role.
organization, you're going to get a new way to pay customers, or or if you're in HR, you're always going to be getting a new system, or libraries, like in
Yes.
the, getting their fourth system in however many years, that you're going to always have to be learning. Your colleagues are going to be transitioning, even if you're not. And so there's a clarity of what is it I want? Why do I want it? What do I need to do to get it? And even if that's maintaining, that doesn't mean doing nothing, but that's an active position.
Yes.
But I think that kind of clarity can also give us for those people who are conflict averse, and I deal with a lot of people who are conflict averse, and that was certainly my background, and I'm still working on it. That
Mhm.
clarity of where I want to go can be the impetus to go ahead and have that difficult conversation. Because
Yes.
if I don't, then what it is I want is going to be harder to attain. But you got to know what
Right.
you want.
Yes. Otherwise, that your work is being defined for you. If you
Mm,
don't speak up, your work's being defined for you. And I know that I've had people say, well, how do I don't know what the goals are,
mm,
or I don't know how my role relates to that. But that's a conversation with your boss, who I think they would appreciate you saying, can you help me understand what we're trying to accomplish in Q1? And then how can I help? How can my role in the company help? What are the things I can do to help achieve that goal? Can we define those and lay those out for this quarter?
yeah,
A boss would love hearing that from you. I know I would, right?
right.
So,
Absolutely. And many times bosses think they've been clear, and maybe they have been clear to others, but if it's not clear to you, it's not clear to you. And only
right,
you know that, right? And
right.
so, again, a little bit of time up front. And that shows engagement, it shows initiative, it shows that I want to be a part of because I want to know.
Yes, exactly. And you're right. I love what you said about, because I talk about this a lot too, is not everybody is this A personality or wants to, get to this level and be an executive. A lot of people don't want that in their lives. They have
Mhm.
other things that they're trying to accomplish, but they do want to maintain within this particular role. But there are, as a marketer, I have to keep up with my profession because it's changed so much. And that part isn't about leadership. It is to some degree, but it's not about leadership or advancing. It's just being really good at being a marketer, right?
Right.
And so that's the same. So you're right. And I think that keeps the interest and excitement for those people who are not looking to advance as a leader.
Yeah. I am really interested this year on Conflict Manage. I'm talking about generations at work. And what has been your experience, or do you have any advice or any experience about having really great teams that are multi-generational? How to, instead of that being an obstacle, I mean, it's really an opportunity when we have, diversity of all different kinds.
Yeah.
But this year I'm talking about diversity of age. How do you, as a leader, make sure that doesn't turn into an obstacle where you're too young, you're too old, whatever it
Mhm.
might be, or you're stuck in the middle, so that we can harness all of those golden opportunities from the people of different ages.
I'm really sensitive to that because I've experienced both. And it really is about creating the norms within the team for
Mhm.
me. So I do believe that everybody has value in the room, and it's not typically, the younger generation has more innovative ideas and the older generation has more strategy. I've seen it both ways, so we have to be really careful of that bias.
Mhm.
And the way I have conversations with my team is I don't know everything, so we're going to figure these things out together. And I think if you start from that place, and when I say we're going to figure things out together, that's everyone, not just the people who have more experience on the team. It's the younger generation as well. And I've been um, really lucky and fortunate to have some stellar employees that step up even though they have not had the experience. And so, I think we have to be careful of those biases. And I've always had great teams, different generations working together well. And it's just it's the norms that we create for our team. It's what's okay and what's not okay, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And I'm pretty clear on those things. And we openly talk about that as a team. We want to work well together. We want to make sure when a new person comes in, they are the right fit, because we work so hard on our culture that we don't want to have that taken away because we hired the wrong person. So we take our time in hiring. And I've had some amazing teams that I've worked with, and large teams, which is hard to keep that up, that culture with when as the team grows. But I've been able to do it, and it was with hiring the right people. And they're all open-minded as well. And that's the part of it. It's being open-minded, recognizing when we have a bias, but not allowing that bias to make decisions.
Mm. I love that. So much of what you've said. I mean, it's this having a culture, intentionality. What is it we're going to do? What are the norms here? And constantly having that conversation. You don't just have it once when they got hired and that's that, right?
Right.
On the foreground, that everybody here has value, that we can learn from anybody, right? We're all in it together. That's, I think when we think about generation wars at work, so many things are just stereotypical, and then we allow that bias to creep in, and then we sit in it and act out of it. Right? The idea is, of
Yes,
course, not to get, well, we want to reduce negative bias, but it's there, right? We're going to have biases, but what do we do
we are.
next?
Right.
Right? So,
It's
right.
recognizing the bias. And one of the things one of the teams I started, we started doing together, and now I do it with all the teams. We would once a month, we decided we wanted to get together, and it was, because it was global, it was on Zoom, but we'd get together and you'd either have breakfast or lunch or dinner, depending on where you were in the world. And we would just talk, and we were not allowed to talk about work at all. And the conversations were around books or movies, or, sometimes we do these little, like, start off with, these are three things, which one's a lie? So you start to get to know each other, those type of games. But then it was just us chit-chatting every month. And it was so nice because you get to know each other on a different level, and you could have worked with someone for a while and going, wow, I didn't know that you were a tennis player or whatever, right? And you start to get to know each other on this different level, and enjoy each other's company. And then you have more respect for each other. And I think that helps to, take away that divide between the generations.
Yeah, absolutely. Proximity. If I have a certain negative bias against somebody, then all of a sudden I'm working with them and I get to know them and I realize, oh, this is a tired stereotype. It doesn't apply here. Oh, everybody's an individual and they've got their lives outside of work and they've got these different. And of course, it actually helps our work because we aren't cogs in a machine. We're
Right.
people working with people.
Right.
And maybe I didn't know that you play tennis, but that actually is something I want to market to this particular sector. And now actually I can use you or I can
Yeah.
ask you about this. And another opportunity opens up because I got to know you, or maybe nothing ever about tennis, but I got to know you. And now we're just resonating more so that we have a deeper understanding when we do whatever project.
Yeah. I think it helps to, some people say, oh, you shouldn't get to know each other personally. Like, that was way back when I started, right? When you're managing, you don't want to know their personal life or anything like that. And we bring that to work, whether we try, whether we want to or not. We're bringing what's happening outside of the office to work. And sometimes it's not bad to know, like, if somebody's dealing with an aging parent, or they just had a child, or whatever the situation is, it allows more grace in the conversations that you're having, if you do know something a little bit about them. And again, some of it is just getting a closer connection because you've just found something you have in common, or
Mhm.
that you find very interesting about that person. Oh, you're in a musical band? Even if I don't play an instrument, that's really fascinating to me, right? So you just
Yeah.
learn a different perspective of that person, and I think you work better together when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is, of course, a fine line of oversharing, undersharing, requiring
Of
people,
course.
we don't want to require people to disclose things they don't want to disclose. But I think that we tend to then fall on one way or the other. Leave your private life at the door,
Yeah.
or I want to know it all, right? And
Right.
neither is appropriate. And, leaving your private life at the door is it's not possible.
Right.
If you are dealing with a health condition or an aging parent, or you just found out you're having a baby, all of that influences how you come in. Of course it
Right.
does. We're
Yes.
people. And
Yeah.
so that proximity, that ability to just be human with one another, because we are all humans trying to get a job done,
Right.
all of that kind
Yeah.
of clarity.
And
So,
and people have a right to share what they want to share. And that's why I
yes,
like talking about books or movies or where are you going on vacation? Like those are safer things to do and talk about. And honestly, sometimes in these rooms you have people that are a little bit more shy and they won't share, but you can see them laughing because somebody said something funny. So they're
right.
engaged too, right? And you're
That's
not
right.
forcing somebody to talk, but they're engaged.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I love doing it. And that's how I stay close with my teams. Even after I go to another company, there's so many of us that we still talk to each other because we had such a great rapport, while we were working together.
Well, that's wonderful. So before we go, I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your book, Not Made for You. So if somebody buys this book, what are they going to find in it?
So what they'll find in it are stories, my experiences, other colleagues that I've worked with, and some more famous cases, that showcase the bias and potential discrimination that happen in, these male-dominated spaces. And the reason why I did that was I wanted people to understand how it may show up for them because some of these things are so subtle we
Mhm.
don't recognize it for what it is or how it ultimately impacts how we're viewed, the people's perception of us or their career path. So there's the stories and then there's scripts for the situations that I do illuminate how you would address them and give them the language on how to address them. And then at the end, I also give strategies that I've employed over the years to have a successful career.
Mhm. Well, wonderful. So it looks like a fantastic read. My last question for you is, as you look into the future of work, what do you think needs to happen so that not only all workers will be treated with dignity and respect, which is a baseline, but that people will thrive and flourish?
So, I mean, I think we all know what should happen as far as having diverse groups of people and changing these systems so that everybody feels comfortable. I mean, I think that can't be something that we don't know at this point. We all know that. What needs to happen is for us to advocate for ourselves, name what's happening. And again, that's why I tell the stories in the book so they can see it when it's happening and name it, and then address it always in a professional, calm way. And then advocate for other people as well. And that is what I think if we start doing that, I think a lot of things that happen, people don't recognize what they're doing. I always say that a lot of men don't recognize that our experience at work as women or people of color is very different than theirs. And when they're aware of it, then they can help change it. And I think a lot of them want to do that. They just
Hmm.
aren't aware of it. Because it just hasn't affected them in any way, right?
Right.
They're not experiencing the same thing that we are. So those are the things that I think will help move cultures and so that we don't have to have these conversations anymore. But it's about speaking up, advocating for yourself, and with grace
Hmm.
and professional conversations that you're having and being calm while you're talking to them.
I love that. I love the story aspect because stories is such a wonderful way to see what I might do, what I might experience, how I might, because I see how you do it. And it helps our brains kind of figure out, well, what might happen. But also what you've said, a lot of times we think about advocating, we think about people on the street, yelling with
Yes,
signs, right? And
right,
that's like the only picture of advocation instead of how do you advocate in a professional, calm, matter of fact way so
right,
that the organization and the people actually get what they want? We all want our organizations and people to thrive. Okay,
right.
so then we need to remove unnecessary roadblocks and we need to have good systems. People don't know what they don't know, right? And
Yes.
how do you do that in this really grace, life-giving way? So thank you for writing this book and showing people what you can do.
Thank you so much.
Well, it's been so lovely talking with you, Kay, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing and have done in teams and the coaching you've done in this wonderful book.
Thank you, Mary, for the opportunity to be able to have this conversation. This was the whole point of writing the book, so that I could have this conversation with people like you who are creating these platforms for us to have these conversations and broaden the exposure of these topics. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I really enjoyed my time with you today.
Oh, me too. Take care. Hey, thank you so much for being on Conflict Managed. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope, listener, that you check out her new book. It looks absolutely fantastic. Conflict Managed is produced by third-party workplace conflict restoration services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you would like and subscribe wherever you are listening or watching this podcast, it's much appreciated. And if you haven't had a chance to check out my own book, which is called Winning the Generation Wars at Work, Making Your Age an Asset, continues this conversation about how do we have really healthy environments for everybody, our multi-generational offices, that we can really figure out how to work well together so that it's to our benefit and not detriment. Our music is courtesy of Dove Pilot. And remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.